Of course, I want to take your call. Welcome in. It's a Monday, beginning of a new week. Hope it's off to a good start for you. This is the College Football Show. It's on the banner Mondays through Fridays, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Typically Monday through Friday. This week, programming note, we will not be here Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Not here Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will make it up to you. However, again, just here Monday and Tuesday this week, but keep it locked in Monday through Friday. This is just an aberration this week. No Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday shows. However, once we clear March Madness, once we get into April and spring games, each and every week, we are going to let you decide when we are going to do a late night call-in show. So we did one on Saturday night. I was not planning it. It was not scheduled. I was just coming home from a nice time out and decided, hey, let's jump on with the fine people and hear what they have to say. And we had a heck of a show from 11 p.m. till 3 a.m. That was on Saturday night. If you've missed it, go check it out. I finished the night at 3 a.m. and it caused me not to be able to sleep for a few minutes, which is typically not me because I can just drop my head on the pillow and I'm out. But I was a bit fired up after yelling at Joe Long for about 10 minutes and having him yell at me. So, Joe, if you're here, good discussion. Well, really wasn't a good discussion. It was a loud discussion on Saturday night, but we had a good time. A lot of good calls, a lot of new callers at a different time. And we've had so many people make comments in recent weeks about, Mark, you don't do a late night show anymore. You used to always do a late night show. That's where I found you. Okay, so we will attempt to do a late night show each and every week. And instead of designating a particular night, we will possibly create some unique ways to get that done. To decide that, we will either randomly select one of you and say, hey, when do you want us to do a late night show this week? Or we will take a vote. We will do something to determine our late night spot each and every week. That is just strictly your calls. Well, I guess I got to respond to the calls. I guess I have to say something in response. But other than that, it's all you. All right, this is the College Football Show. We've got Melissa Treebosser, who is scheduled to stop by from Frogs Insider Podcast on Dave Campbell's College Football, Dave Campbell's Texas College Football. Melissa is just about the longest running guest here at the Voice of College Football. Just about. She might be actually the one. She's close to the top of the list. There's no doubt about that. 12, 13 years, whatever it's been. Long, long time. I didn't have any gray hairs then. All right, who's in the chat? Blue Wolverine. Todd's here. And as we anticipate your calls, which I guess it's a bit difficult to make a call when there's no call-in line in the chat. Mike G is here. Mike, you could always give me a call. Mike has enough complaints about my content that he should probably give me a call one of these days. Talk to me firsthand. So the call-in line's in the chat. And again, Melissa Treebosser, Frogs Insider Podcast, scheduled to stop by. Jason Priester from the Clemson Insider, our scheduled guest for Tuesday. And again, we will wrap up the week here at the Voice of College Football in terms of this particular show on Tuesday. Programming note, no Wednesday, Thursday, Friday shows, but I'm coming through for you long term on this one. A call-in show, a late night call-in show. We will decide and determine based on your opinions, your desires, your requests each and every week. This article caught my eye today. This coming in from our buddy Brad Crawford with 247 Sport. No, I'm sorry. This is CBS Sports, right? College football news. My goodness. Yeah, CBS Sports. CBS Sports. Let's get that straight. Yeah, again, Brad Crawford's been on here a number of times. Good guy. Hope to have him back soon. College football's best, worst coaching contracts. Not the best coaches or the worst coaches, but the best and worst coaching contracts. And I saw this and I thought we just started having this conversation the other day when we saw that Dan Lanning got an extension. Makes sense. Kirby Smart, of course, last offseason, enormous extension and the highest paid coach in college football. And then some curious extensions like the one given to Luke Fickell for like 8 years down the road when he's done nothing at Wisconsin except botch things up through 2 seasons. And I like Luke Fickell, and I thought that was the best coaching hire of that particular offseason, but that is not proven to be the case yet. So, without unveiling this list, I went through it and it certainly made sense top to bottom. I think we could all fill out this list fairly easily. Let's see if there are any surprises out there. Again, not just necessarily the best and worst coaches, but tied to the contract situation. And I like an Alex Rodriguez contract situation with the New York Yankees during his tenure there after he left the Texas Rangers and he got that ridiculous contract with the Yankees. I liken that similar to some college football coaches, but most notably Jimbo Fisher. So they give him too much money to start. But at that point, a national championship coach only about 4 to 5 years removed at that point. And only a couple seasons removed from an Orange Bowl win, a top 10 finish. Texas A&M starved for a winner. They throw too much money at Jimbo Fisher, fine. Sometimes you got to overpay. He doesn't come through. He's not a disaster, but he doesn't come through. 8-5, 8-5, 8-5 over and over and over. 9-4, I believe his first or second season. Other than that, ton of 8-5s, throwing a 5-7. 2020, that was an odd season. They played a weak schedule. They went to 9-1, won the Orange Bowl. That was his best season by far. Top 5 season in a COVID year. And they threw him more money and a contract extension. They cost themselves just maybe 1 year? Whether it was 1 year or it might have been 2 off seasons, it was no more than that. After they gave him a contract extension and more money, an unnecessary contract extension. There are contract extensions that are either earned or there are contract extensions that are somewhat required. And in this case, it was not needed. They screwed themselves out of a ton of money. This is what would piss me off if I was a booster and if I was shelling out all sorts of money to stupid athletic directors making dumb decisions. And Ross Bjork did a fine job at Texas A&M in a number of ways. I'm not calling him in particular stupid, and his arm might have been twisted by some boosters, in fact, or someone. He's now at Ohio State. But man, you're almost out of a contract. Your buyout's not going to be exorbitant. Your coach is underachieving. He's not failing. He's underachieving. And then you go out and you extend him. And I don't agree with, nor do I think it's effective to show recruits that a particular coach has a contract extension these days. I think that worked at one point, but I don't think that works now. These kids should know these contracts mean nothing, except when you fire a coach and you've got to buy out the contract. That's when they hurt. That's when they matter. they don't necessarily or generally keep these schools from firing the coach, maybe a year later than they wanted to, possibly, depending on the school and how high their standards are on the field and how much money they have. And but from the coaching side, in terms of making a decision on whether to move on, does not impact their decision. They're going to take a better job. So the contract extension is overrated. Much overrated. Overall and from a recruiting standpoint. So that is the classic example. Jimbo Fisher getting way too much money, and then you've got a buyout. And it was a nightmare situation at that point for Texas A&M, but they only had themselves to blame. So again, this is Brad Crawford from CBS Sports. So he is citing the best contracts in college football belonging to Lane Kiffin, meaning not the best for the coach, the best situation for the school. So Lane Kiffin has been extended twice with a pay increase since 2022. And he's done an excellent job. Ole Miss was not winning 10 games. They did once under Hugh Freeze. 10 wins or more in 3 of the past 5 years. They just won 10 games this past year. They won a major bowl game 2 years ago. It's an attractive destination, as noted by Brad Crawford right there. So that appears to be a good contract. And Lane Kiffin has earned his extension again and again. Matt Campbell, Iowa State, the all-time winningest coach at Iowa State. 11 wins this past year. Bowl win, went to the Big 12 championship game. Still that elusive Big 12 championship, though. 8-year extension. And he was courted by North Carolina. I was unaware of that, and others for the most part, has done more with less, yes, although they did have a bit of a swoon after 2020, in which that was the season, the next season after 2020 for Iowa State was their high water mark. They won the Fiesta Bowl. They finished in the top 10, and then they brought back all that talent led by Brock Purdy. They were loaded going into 21, and they fell to 7-6. That's the one black mark on Matt Campbell's resume. Though terms of Campbell's new deal have not yet been disclosed, he only made $4 million last year. Ranks outside the top 50 nationally. I would not have guessed that. I know it's Iowa State. I know that he came into that situation from Toledo as not a highly sought after coach at a high level. But man, I would have thought that they would have increased to the point that he would have been beyond $4 million. So that is a great contract for Iowa State University. Brent Key, Georgia Tech, at $2.9 million last season. Key was on the bottom rung of ACC coaches. They went 7-5. They lost a bowl game 7-6. Went 7-6 the year before that. And Brad cites some of their key contributions, or some of their key moments, basically, in taking Georgia to the brink in 8 overtimes. And of course, they beat Miami. They looked really good down the stretch. They played a brutal schedule, the toughest in the ACC. So Georgia Tech has stepped in with a 5-year extension for Brent Key. And Brent Key's done a remarkable job since taking over midseason for Jeff Collins in what would that have been? That would have been maybe 2021? And they played so much better. They were losing almost every game in the ACC for a couple of years. Just atrocious. And Brent Key has, offensive line guy. The recruiting rankings are not going to say much to his efforts there. It's more about player development and scheme and just smarts and attitude. Deion Sanders. What can we say? It's impressive. Takes over a 1-win football team, lifts them to 4, lifts them to 9. Did I think it was a good hire? I don't know. I would have to go back to my evaluation at the time. I almost positive I considered it a boom or bust hire, and it's been a boom. The Buffaloes nearly challenged for a Big 12 crown last fall. Well, they did challenge for it. They were in it to the final weekend. And lo and behold, we're entering a third season with Deion Sanders at Colorado. A lot of people thought that he would be gone by now, especially after his son left. Shane Beamer, South Carolina. I am guessing that this will be the weakest of the positive contracts here because Shane Beamer is only one season removed from 5-7. He's done a nice job at South Carolina, but not remarkable. They were in a bad situation with Will Muschamp leaving. So they went 9-4, almost made the college football playoff. Were highly impressive coming down the stretch. So he's at $8.1 million. This is a bargain, according to Brad Crawford, writing here. This is a bargain for a coach who looks to be a South Carolina lifer. If the winning continues, he's not the type to sniff around at other vacancies. And that's part of the analysis here as well. Who's going to stick around? Maybe the guy's not a full home run hire. Maybe he's a triple, but he's going to stick around. Okay, on to the losers. And this one is not surprisingly at the top of the list. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. I responded similarly to Luke Fickell's contract extension. I could not believe what I was reading. 1-year extension. Why? It's not like he's got a 2-year contract. He just finished his second season and gets a 1-year extension out to whatever the year is there, 2031. It was already set to expire in 2030. This is only 2025. And he's 7-6, 5-7. He has not met Wisconsin standards. He is performing worse, and his team is, than any Wisconsin head coach since before Barry Alvarez. Dave McClain days. He comes to mind. Badgers legend Barry Alvarez voiced his displeasure with the current state of affairs last month, coming off the program's first losing campaign for 23 years. Mark Stoops. We did not expect Mark Stoops to be on this kind of list as of 2 years ago. But Kentucky is flatlined, and they're on a downhill slide now. They went 4-8 last year. They were only 7-6, 7-6 the 2 years before that. That takes us back to, don't recall, maybe 2021 was a good year. I believe 10-3, but he also had a bad COVID year at 5-6. But so basically 5 of his last 6 seasons. And his record in the SEC is deplorable. And I know it took him forever to build this to a decent level. And for 3 or 4 years, he was one of the hottest coaching commodities. So I believe Mark Stoops needs to step it up. Oh, there's no doubt about that. He was stating at last SEC Media Days that what has happened at Kentucky is not good enough. So he's called himself out to say it's not good enough, and that was after 7-6. Now we're after 4-8. They are 4-14 in their last 18 SEC games. He has lost 10 of his last 12 home games against the SEC. And he was this close to going to Texas A&M the previous offseason. But the fan base did not go for that. And I don't know if there were any heavy hitters involved that put a stop to Mark Stoops to Texas A&M. And there we've got Brent Venables. Here we go. Brent Venables, hired by Oklahoma. His first season was in 2022. They go 6-7. He wins 10 the next year, 10-3. He's already got a long-term contract. But what does Oklahoma do? Sign him to a 6-year extension worth $51 million. They were just blasted by injuries last year, especially a wide receiver, the offensive line, but mostly the wide receiver. I've never heard of 5 wide receivers going down, your top 5 guys. But man, they were bad. 6-7. They lose their quarterback in Jackson Arnold, Brent Venables. And we've talked about this with a number of coaches, where this has now become the era of the coaching decision in the transfer portal. Does the coach save his job, or does he lose his job based on his decision to, number one, go in the transfer portal or not go in the transfer portal and rely on his recruiting prowess, his eye for judgment out of the high school ranks, and the ability to develop a freshman, sophomore quarterback for play at the big time? So these coaches are more and more in this transfer portal era. Their legacies, their job security is tied to their decision in the portal concerning quarterbacks. Do you go in the portal? And number 2, who do you get? And for Brent Venables, they went to the portal to get Dillon Gabriel, but Dillon Gabriel only played, I guess he played 2 seasons at Oklahoma. Yeah, 22-23, coming off a stellar career at UCF, and he played well. He was oft injured the one season that they only won 6 games. So that was a good move by Oklahoma, going to get Dillon Gabriel. And then they turn over the offense to Jackson Arnold, and he wasn't ready for it. Plus, he was not placed in a good situation. So they went away from the portal and stayed with what they had, because when you recruit and sign a 5-star, you can't just continue to sign quarterback after quarterback over him. So they give Jackson Arnold the job. It doesn't work out. They install him back in the lineup 3 or 4 weeks later. He does play better, but he's off to Auburn. And here we go again. Now it's John Mateer out of Washington State, 44 touchdowns accounted for last year. So once again, and this may be the final decision that Brent Venables gets to execute at Oklahoma, he goes and gets Washington State's John Mateer. Well, of course, Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell would have been in the other category at this point last year. What a roller coaster ride. They restructured his contract coming off, of course. What happened in 2024? Well, they restructured it. Okay. Restructured as in Brian Kelly 2017 and Jim Harbaugh 2020. Restructured the contract after the disaster that was 2024. So Norvell's contract runs through 2031. His buyout is the largest in the ACC at $63 million. That's only 1 year after he got a contract extension and a big boost, a big raise after the 13-win season. That contract has put the Seminoles in a financial straitjacket for the foreseeable future because the buyout is just too high. At this point, Mike Norvell's entire legacy at Florida State in a positive vein stems on generally one transfer portal class that pushed them to 10-3, 13-1. But they have got to recruit so much better in state and in the high school recruiting process. Lincoln Riley. Let's not forget that he took over a 4-8 football team that was the worst defensive situation in the Pac-12 and immediately turned them around. He did have Caleb Williams at quarterback, brought him in from Oklahoma, but that's what good coaches do. They bring in good players, and they went to 11-3. They were maybe a Caleb Williams injury from going to the college football playoff because they led Utah by 2 touchdowns in the conference championship game. Williams goes down, not totally. He continued in the game, but he was not the same player. They blew the game against Utah and lost the bowl game. And since then, 15 wins and 11 defeats. They had road losses to Minnesota, Maryland, and Washington. USC accounted for Maryland's only Big Ten win, 1-8. Riley's buyout figure ahead of the 2025 season might make the decision makers in Los Angeles a bit squeamish given its parameters. Unless Riley leaves for another vacancy in the next few years, the Trojans are on the hook for the long haul. Riley's buyout number is $90 million, second only to Georgia coach Kirby Smart. That is the rundown. Folks, we've got Vandy Dandy, Will ND, Timothy Green. You know it's got to be hard being a head football coach, either a hero or a zero. And that's, Mike Norvell, more so than anybody else in recent times, has seen both sides of it. All right, let's head out to the Big 12 and talk some Big 12 football. We got Melissa Treebwasser standing by. She and her show is, of course, Frogs Insider on Dave Campbell College Football, Dave Campbell Texas Football. Melissa, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I know we must be getting close to spring ball. When I hear from you, that's how I always know it's almost football time again.
Got to hear from Melissa. Get the rundown on the Frogs. It's been a roller coaster.
That's the truth. Hey, listen, we're all in with TCU women's basketball right now. Our number 6 Horned Frogs just swept the regular season and conference tournament championship, beat Baylor 3 times after going 35 years between victories over that team. So,
what?
Fort Worth is really into collegiate women's basketball right now. It's really exciting.
They've played Baylor, maybe not twice every year for 35 years, but a bunch of times, I'm sure. They never won any of those games. I know Baylor's been great in women's basketball recently, but
yeah, it is.
Years.
There was a pretty good gap. So Baylor's been pretty successful over about the last 2 decades. And then there was a gap where they were not in the same conference for about 10 or 15 years. And back in the Southwest Conference days, TCU hadn't won. I mean, I think it'd been since the early 80s. So yeah, it was a big deal to get that first one. It was a lot of fun to get the next 2.
Wow. Beat them in the conference tournament. Okay. What's the matchup for round 1? Well,
We'll find out next Sunday. Yeah. So
Yeah.
TCU women's tournament, you host the first two games. So the women TCU will be having March Madness in Fort Worth in a couple of weeks. And like I said, Haley Van Lith is awesome. Madison Connor might be the best pure shooter, men's or women's basketball. So it's been a really fun team to watch. Mark Campbell has taken a team that was 1-17 in conference 2 years ago to 30-3, 31-3 now overall this season, and number 6 in the country. So it's pretty cool.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to the
Football,
roller
yeah.
coaster.
The hot seat is up for every coach in Fort Worth, including Sonny Dykes, after how quickly Mark Campbell turned things around. So yeah, this is a big spring for TCU football for sure.
Yeah, and so just to take everybody back, of course, it was 5-7 before the national championship game run to 13-2, and then back down to 5-7, and then a nice little bounce back at 9-4 with a bowl victory. Although I don't know who wanted to see TCU play Louisiana, but
Yeah.
Anyway, 9-4, and here we are with. I checked a few things out. 30 additions to the roster. Now I know that we've got 30 in the class of 2025 that was ranked number 21, at least according to one service here. So I went through the transfers, didn't see anything necessarily of note that most people would catch, but who are the guys that stand out to you in regards to who TCU fans are looking forward to seeing that has shown up this year?
Yeah, there's not a lot in the transfer portal. I think it's really interesting as you see coaches trying to figure out what strategy works for them. TCU certainly willing to spend in NIL. They don't have the unlimited budgets some of these blue blood organizations, or even Texas Tech right now, who has Cody Campbell just printing money to sign guys out of the portal. And I think what Sonny Dykes learned from that 5-7 season is bringing in talent is important, but bringing in fit and leadership and culture is equally as important in a sport like football. And so after taking a ton of portals and going 5-7, they kind of looked more to fill specific needs to get to that 9 wins a season ago. And this year they really built in their high school class. So you're going to see a couple of JUCO guys. There's, they got Kavion Barnes from UTSA at running back, which, if he can revert to his freshman year form, could be a great pickup, but he really struggled a season ago. And then the biggest one that they get back is Cade Bennett on the offensive line, who he was a transfer from San Diego State that sat out the entirety of last season. But him coming back in to solidify the line could really help. What you're going to see is some true freshmen that might be able to contribute right away. The biggest of whom might be Chad Woodfork on the defensive line. There's areas to compete, and that kid does not look anything like a 17 or 18-year-old as an early enrollee. And every single high school signee enrolled early from that December signing period. So I think that you might see some freshmen contribute. They've got a running back who looks like he's going to be really good. He could get some run right away as well. But really what this is about is guys coming back, the offensive line solidifying, and Josh Hoover going through spring ball as the starter for the first time in his history at TCU.
Yeah, so let's get to Josh Hoover's development. Pretty pleased with his performance last year, and what would be the next steps of progress for him?
TCU started really slow a season ago and finished 5-1, plus the bowl win to get six out of their last 7 games. And that was really the difference in that record. But what we saw during TCU's early season struggles, the losses to UCF and Houston especially, was just not taking care of the ball. Hoover's had a great penchant for making plays at the right moment, but did get a little bit sloppy kind of early in the season. And so if he can take care of the football and make sure that he is getting the ball to. I'm sorry, I think we might be having something just going on over the fire drill there. But what he needs to do is develop chemistry with Eric McAllister, Jordan Dwyer, who's probably the biggest name transfer. I haven't gotten to him yet. Out of Idaho at wide receiver, but he loses Jack Besh, he loses Savion Williams, he loses his security blanket as well, his 3 top receivers are all gone. So he's going to have to develop new chemistry with those new guys and find ways to make plays, in big moments, because the running game is going to be a giant question mark going into 2025, just like it was going into 2024. And Cam Cook, who was your opening day starter a season ago, also is gone, left via the transfer portal. So Hoover's just got to be smart with the football. He's got to develop. He put up huge numbers. But he's going to have to find ways to do it without, Besh, Savion Williams, and, another complement of really veteran guys that he had this last year.
Everything good there, Melissa? Fire drill. You don't have to run to the exits or anything.
No, I think it was just a drill. So I'm sorry, I did not anticipate that happening, but I'm still at work, and these are the things that happen at schools. You just never know.
No doubt. Appreciate you being here. This is Melissa Treebosser. I made mention a few minutes ago when I was setting everybody up for you jumping on here, as Melissa has joined us probably as long as anybody. She's right near the top of the list. It's been a long, long time, way over 10 years.
Yeah.
And you can catch Melissa at Frogs Insider. That's the podcast for Dave Campbell's college football and Dave Campbell's Texas football. So besides following Melissa on X/Twitter, and you got the handle right there, the Coach Melissa, maybe the best way to find you and everything else going on related.
Yeah, absolutely. There, the YouTube channel, social media, Instagram as well, at Frogs Insider. You'll see a lot of the photos and stuff that we post. We post all our press conferences and interviews that we do with players and coaches. Those are all available on our YouTube channel. And of course, Twitter is definitely the easiest way to get my hot sports takes and my soon to be, I'm sure, serious complaining about TCU football if they don't look like they're going to win, 11 games on day one of spring ball.
There you go. I remember the Stanford win right out of the gate on a Friday night, and then a curious loss against Houston that I didn't quite understand or see.
Neither did I.
Yeah, that one. And so, I saw the team play 5 or 6 times during the year, but like you mentioned, at 9-4, and because of the mad dash at the end at 6-1, it was one of those teams that I think a lot of people wrote off, didn't pay attention to nationally, and then maybe got surprised that, this team went 9-4. So taking that into consideration and all the additions and subtractions during the offseason, are TCU fans, more importantly, you, pretty comfortable where the program is?
Gosh, no, absolutely not. I think if you look at it, TCU had that magical run in 2022, but if you look at the last decade, it's been a lot of up and down. You mentioned roller coaster at the beginning of the show, and I think that absolutely describes it. And I think what TCU fans want to find, especially after realignment and in a Big 12 I don't think I'm blowing anyone's mind if I say it's pretty soft conference right now. There's not a standout team. There's not a blue blood. There's not a team you expect to win every year. TCU fans, and myself included, feel like TCU should be one of those teams that establishes itself as the flag bearer for the state and for the conference as a whole. I think Arizona State's got something really great working with Kenny Dillingham. Oklahoma State has got a lot to prove this offseason. But historically, they should be one of the elite teams in the league. But TCU has no excuse to not be contending nearly annually for a spot in the Big 12 Conference Championship game. If you look at location, if you look at resources, if you look at facilities, if you look at talent, they should be right there. And so last year, even though they won 9 games, it felt like a soft 9 wins. I think they only beat one team that was bowl eligible over the course of the season. The loss to Houston, like you mentioned, was relatively inexcusable, I would say. And then blowing a giant lead against UCF in the third quarter and losing that game. You take those two and turn them around, you're looking at a completely different season for the Horned Frogs. So this year is really, I don't want to say that Sonny Dykes is going into the season with a hot seat, but they can't afford to start slow out of the gate. They're going to open at UNC. They're going to be just like it was with Deion Sanders a couple of years ago. TCU is going to be the first team that faces Bill Belichick as a collegiate coach. And so, that obviously is an opportunity to make a statement, to look prepared. It'll be a tough game, but I think that TCU is much more talented than what UNC is going to have this first year of Belichick's reign. So they've got to play good there. They have SMU. They got just absolutely blown out in Dallas last year. This is the last time the Iron Skillet game is on the schedule for the foreseeable future. You have to hold court and hold serve at home and kind of reestablish yourself as the football team in the Metroplex. So there's a lot of pressure. The schedule is more difficult on paper than it was a season ago, but it's certainly not one that should keep TCU from being a serious contender for a Big 12 championship. So my expectations are tempered. I have a lot of questions about the offensive line in the run game, but with Josh Hoover coming back, the most experienced signal caller in the conference, at least returning signal caller in the conference, you would expect the offense to be good. And Andy Avalos really had the defense cooking in the last half of the season. So if they continue to play on the trajectory they finished the year on, there's no reason that TCU should not be a 10-win team. That being said, we've got to see Sonny Dykes do it and do it for an entire season, which he's really only done once.
Melissa, this is just one of the reasons why I love having you on, because most people, their team's about here and they talk them up to about here. And you're just, hey, 9-4, it was kind of soft. Look at it.
I'm a TCU fan. I have been hurt for a quarter of a century at this point in athletics. So, I want to be realistic. Like, I think this team could be really, really good. But I don't know if really, really good is going to translate into, a Big 12 championship. The 2022 season, a lot of great things happened, but you had a generational talent in Max Duggan, who was, I would argue, among the most elite winners I've ever seen in college football. Not the best quarterback I've ever seen, and never would be considered such, but just had this special will. And it was a really special locker room. We saw the locker room completely fall apart the season after. And I think last year you started to see guys like Josh Hoover step into those leadership roles, and Cooper McDonald and Bud Clark coming back is massive for the defense. He's such a wonderful leader and such a great personality. But Sonny has been so much more particular in the types of players and people he's bringing in, that he really is focusing on culture. And I think that he's probably learned that from watching guys like Kirk Saarloos with baseball, and Eric Bell with TCU women's soccer, and Mark Campbell with TCU women's basketball, and saying you can take big swings in the portal, but they have to be the right type of people that want to play together and can put their ego aside for the betterment of the team. Really, really hard to do that in college football right now. So it feels like he's handled things the right way. He's also added more than a dozen staff members this offseason. I mean, TCU has to have probably the biggest staff in the Big 12, and potentially like one of the biggest 15 or 20 in the entire country right now. And so they're giving him the resources to be successful. And he knows that. Sonny is very self-aware. He knows the pressure is on and he's got a lot to prove, but he's got returning coordinators on both sides of the ball for the first time, I think, in his history at TCU, one of the rare times in his coaching career. So the excuses are kind of gone, and it's going to be put up or shut up mode.
Now, you may actually be at the game, because I don't know if they're going to North Carolina or is that at TCU?
Going to North Carolina. I'm 100% going to that game. Are you kidding me? Come on. It's Bill Belichick. Of course I'm going to be there.
All right. So you're going to be there. So I was just setting you up for the annoyance of watching a nationally televised game, just like you did with Deion's debut at Colorado, and nobody says anything about TCU during the broadcast. It's all going to be about Belichick, of course.
Of course. But that's a great opportunity, right? Like everybody, all of the pressure is on the Tar Heels. All of and TCU had that opportunity against Deion Sanders in Fort Worth when he traveled down there, and they blew it. And so the whole rocket ship of Colorado and Deion took off because of the way that they beat TCU. And it wasn't a blowout, but they just looked so much more athletic and so much hungrier than TCU did on that day. And so it's going to be the same thing. You've got a coach who, I don't know what kind of talent he can put together. He wasn't exactly great at that down the tenure at New England, and it's probably the reason he's no longer coaching in the NFL, is his insistence on being a GM. And to be a successful college football coach, you have to be a good evaluator, and you have to put together good, talented teams. But he brought in people to do that for him that have quite a bit of experience doing exactly that. So it's going to be interesting, but it's TCU gets the chance to kind of play underdog, and it's very rare that a 9-win team gets to travel to an ACC school and be kind of the lesser than team on the broadcast. But if they win, now TCU has a chance to be the rocket ship and be getting all of the positive media attention. If they lose, nobody's going to talk about them. And it's really going to, I'll tell you what, it's going to set off some fireworks in Fort Worth for sure, though, because people will be people were embarrassed after Colorado, and rightfully so. If you lose to Bill Belichick, it's going to be very much a, oh no, here we go again kind of feeling.
Before we let you go, Melissa, since you did bring up Deion, we were looking at the TV ratings. We always do a series and go through everything, comb it, set it up. And obviously, people watch Colorado football. They accounted for the 10 highest rated games in the conference.
Wow.
Is he good for the conference? He's sticking around, if nothing else. This is now a third season, maybe longer than most people thought he would, even with his sons moving on. Do you think he's good for Big 12 football?
Yeah, I've actually really come around on this. I was kind of annoyed at first, and probably because TCU lost that opening game, and it just gave me a bad taste in my mouth. And because I've been to Big 12 media days both the years that he's attended, and he is pompous, and he's not good to the media unless you're good to him. And his son was throwing his offensive line under the bus. And for all of those reasons, I'm like, this will never work. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, the Big 12 does not have a school to hang its hat on. There is not a school that people tune into just because of the name. Texas is one of those schools. Texas was bad in the Big 12 for every year but their last. Like for the last 15 years, I mean, TCU dominated Texas when both teams were in the conference together. They were irrelevant on the national stage, but everybody watched Texas. Oklahoma was really good, so everybody watched Oklahoma, but now Oklahoma's not so good and nobody's like, you have to have that cachet, right? And so Dion, for as long as he's here, everybody's going to watch Dion, and they would watch him if he were at Colorado. They'd watch him if he were at TCU. They'd watch him if he were at Alabama, right? He's Deion Sanders. And so I think, I think that Arizona State really acquitted itself nicely against Texas in that playoff game and played a heck of a ball game and still didn't get any national respect. As much as people like Cam Scatabo, it's not like he was not must watch TV. He was must watch highlights. And so if you have a figure like that can be a spotlight, and Dion does seem to genuinely care about Colorado. He seems to be bought into college football and he cares about the conference. He has brought a lot of and because they were good good enough last year, he brought a lot of positive spotlight to the league. And so I'm of the belief that in this era of more realignment and we're heading towards a two superpowers and potentially like a 64 team haves and haves nots kind of conference, I want as many people to watch TCU as possible. And if that means that cheering on Deion Sanders to be a longtime part of this conference, I'm all for it. He's going to come to Fort Worth again this fall. I want all eyes on that game because if TCU plays well and draws numbers, it helps their long-term future. And as a TCU alum, a TCU fan, and someone that covers the team, what I care about is not just 2025, but 2030 and beyond when things start to change again.
Nice. Melissa Treebwasser, Frogs Insiders, the podcast, and you can catch her with that podcast right on Dave Campbell's college football, Dave Campbell's Texas football. But of course, Melissa, she's watching basketball these days, but of course, spring football is right around the corner too. Both of them.
That'll be coming in a couple of weeks, and they've already said we'll have some open practices. We'll see if we have a spring game. That seems to be a little bit not a thing people do anymore, but they'll have us out at practice. And I will say, I want to also let's just shout this out because I was at the Big 12 tournament for the women last week, and I was talking to lots of beat reporters. They were all saying how they're getting zero access to football players and coaches this time of year. Sonny Dykes and TCU have had media availability pretty much every week since we got back after Christmas. And so that is something I really appreciate. I will have lots to talk to you guys about because Sonny Dykes and TCU open up the doors and make players available to us pretty much every single week. And I think that's awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah. And my dealings with Sonny Dykes, which has only been a few times, but that I got a chance to interview him. He was nice enough to come on here a few times when he was at Cal. And elsewhere with American Conference Media Days when I was there a few times. Yeah, really good guy.
He's great. Yeah. I want him to be successful because I really do like the guy. And I want TCU to win, but I think he does things. He really does make it easy for us to do our job. And I appreciate that about him.
Well, thank you, Melissa. Good to see you. And have a great run throughout March Madness.
All right, will do. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya. Yeah, little take on TCU football. Why not? And again, couple programming notes here would be number one, even though it is Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, we are doing our best to make this a staple for all of you. So tell your friends, your family, your enemies. We don't care who you tell. Tell everybody you can find the college football shows here Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We know that we've had a bit of a crawl of a launch, but it's, February into March. But once March clears and it's April and spring games, somebody's still going to play spring football games. Somebody. But regardless, we've got spring football practice. And then on into the off season, we're going to have program rankings are coming. All-time program rankings are coming. So we got to kind of separate those, not to confuse people. Coaches rankings are coming. I got to look at those, get those out soon. So a lot of good stuff in store. But again, we're here Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, not this Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. I've got some obligations later this week. And then also keep in mind, though, to pay you back in spades. See, this past Saturday night, we jumped on late night with a call-in show. People seemed to respond well to that. Had a lot of happy people that showed up and said hi and showed their faces and called the show that I have not talked to a few people ever. So we're going to do that each and every week. When? No, not Saturday night necessarily. Not any particular night necessary. Want to hit as many people as possible, give you an opportunity as much as possible to join the show, join the chat, and call me. Therefore, at the beginning of every week, we are going to pick some random way to decide when is our call-in show, our late night call-in show this week. So we may just say, hey, Will ND, it's up to you this week. When's the call-in show? Tell me. When's the time? Give me the time and then probably I'll look at my schedule and go, sorry, not that time, not that. No. But we'll figure it out, and we will leave it up to a vote, a poll. We'll just pick out somebody. George, when do you want the late night show this week? That's what we'll do. Again, we had a good time last Saturday night, so we will do that going forward. And we certainly want to hear from Mr. Todd Gwynn, who has kindly and so generously gifted the Voice of College Football membership. And Todd, I'm glad you did that for obvious reasons, but also because of this, that reminds me. I'll be jumping on here in the next couple of weeks to say, again, I kind of clear out March a little bit. We're still here, but I know a lot of people get locked into basketball. Do we do post-game basketball shows after like Sweet 16 games? I don't know. Maybe. But certainly, Todd has reminded me that we are going to do a live stream where we are going to talk to all of you about Patreon and YouTube memberships, because we want to make those valuable for you. And I cannot thank you enough to everyone, and I know this is not everyone that is of this opinion, and that's fine, but to everyone, when I ever ask, what do you want for your YouTube membership, or what do you want for your Patreon membership? And I understand that some of you may be out there saying, why do you have Patreon membership and YouTube membership? Well, that's because there was not a YouTube membership when I started a Patreon membership. So we started Patreon, and then YouTube comes out a couple of years later with a membership. And I thought, well, I don't want to cancel the Patreon, because then all these people will be dropped and they may not necessarily transfer over to YouTube. So what we have done is our best to just align them and make them equal in regards to pricing and benefits. But my point here is that most people, when I've asked, what do you want out of your YouTube or Patreon membership? You know what their response has been? Nothing. We're good. You create more content than anyone. It's there. You got all this for us for free. It's fine. I appreciate that response, but at the same time, to grow it massively, because that's the vision. We've got a big vision here. We want to deliver. So we'll have a little Patreon, YouTube live stream, and we'll talk about what we can do to make it bigger and better. After dark. That's it. That could be it. We could take the call-in show, the late call-in show, to Patreon and YouTube memberships. Red Buckeye, thank you so much for that. We appreciate you. Tukey G, you ain't kidding. You either I've said that and you remember me saying that, or you know something about the YouTube game. Yeah. Yes. The Patreon take home's like 85% compared to like 60 or 65%. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it might be better than 85%. It's not quite 90. I would have to look at that, Todd, but I think it's exactly the same. I think whatever is gifted, yes, from individuals to any YouTuber has the same cut. So whether that's a membership or that's a super chat, they cut into it the same. I'm almost positive. Will ND says, maybe we're turning this into the YouTube Patreon membership live stream right here. But Will says, do the first hour on YouTube, the second hour for the members. That's a possibility too. A lot of possibilities out there. We can thank Tukey G last weekend for putting it in my ear to do a late night show. And I did. But that wasn't good enough, I guess. Now he wants Friday and Saturday night at 11 Eastern. Yes, Gary Patterson was strong against Texas. 7-3. Believe he lost the last one, maybe the last two. Vanderbilt spring game. That's another thing concerning the spring games. And this is tradition here at the Voice of College Football. I will set up camp on Saturdays during spring football games. And unless something pops up, we will go live after the major spring games, whether that's after a particular spring game or after a series of spring games that afternoon. We'll go live in the evening to wrap up all the spring practice games, or the spring games is what they are. Timothy, thank you so much for that. Personally, I always think you do a great job, and it shows all of the hard work you put in to make it happen. Thank you for what you do for fans like us. Well, I do appreciate that. And we don't need to overstate this, but as stated at the State of the Voice of College Football, really, this show's not nearly as good as I would like it to be, but I'm running a business and kind of getting into the process of running multiple businesses, unfortunately. But so we're stretched a bit thin. So I'm not quite as prepared for these shows as I would like to be. I pretty much just sit down and shoot from the hip, but you guys make all this go. As Jackson is posting on the screen, Disputed National Champions, that's the book. And it's a historical reset of the 1990s. I believe this to be the most impactful, formative decade in the history of college football in determining championships. So we have a whole lot of fun here for that type of look at college football. Every season, we break down every season, top to bottom, in a succinct way. This is not an encyclopedia, as you can see. In a succinct way, we break down each season and the aftermath of the season, who got screwed, who got left out, what did the season mean? And then it's not a history book. We take all of these results from the 1990s, meaning 1990 through 99, and put it into the BCS, the 14 playoff, the 12-team playoff, and the proposed 14-team playoff. And there you go. Disputed National Champions. The link is in the description section down below. Jackson, thank you so much for posting. Or you can just go to Amazon and look up Disputed National Champions. I don't want to confuse anyone out there by what I'm about to say. Do whatever is easiest for you. But I had somebody at the publishing company. So when I say publishing company, I did not have a full publisher deal with this because it's way too expensive, but had them help me, kind of walk me through it. They say that the most effective way is to go to Amazon and look it up. They don't want you to go to the Amazon link that only goes directly to the page because they want you searching for things. How that affects me, I have no idea. Do it however you want. Disputed National Champions, you can either look it up on Amazon or you can grab the link that Jackson has posted, or it's in the description section of this video and every video. And again, we will not have shows Wednesday and Thursday this week. And again, starting, can't say this for sure. We're either going to start it next week or we may wait for March Madness to clear out and then we'll start our late night show once a week. Once a week, a late night show. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos as well. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. If you're just joining us, check out what you missed. We had a great conversation with Melissa Treebwasser on TCU football, and I open up by talking about the Brad Crawford article on CBS Sports, which dealt with sorry, I'm looking for something here, which dealt with the best and the worst coaching contracts. I am looking to highlight our new Instagram page. Doing my best to find it. We'll get there. Give me a second. You don't want to see my personal Instagram. It doesn't matter. Follow me if you want. But we want to highlight the Voice of College Football Instagram. There we go. So our guys are doing a remarkable job with this. This just launched a few weeks ago. We got 32 followers. We want to make that 300 in a few weeks. We want to make that 3,000 and keep going from there. And they're doing a heck of a job in regards to posting breaking news, quotes, and mostly ratings and rankings, both our rankings or we are reposting, let's say, a 247 ranking. And just here recently, we've got where will these wide receivers go in the NFL draft? Best nicknames of all time. Let's look at this thing. And again, join us on Instagram and Twitter. We are highlighting the Instagram right here. I apologize for all these 10-second pauses, but I'm trying to work this system while I'm talking at the same time. I am not the best at doing two things at the same time. Best nicknames of all time. Who should be on this thing? Well, we're looking at, of course, Johnny Football, which I immediately thought that was a great nickname. It's not a complicated nickname. It's not even that clever. It's got a ton of swag to it. It just has a ton of swag. Johnny Football. Okay, who do we have here? We got the Bus, Jerome Bettis. I guess he picked up that nickname in college. I don't remember him being called the Bus in college, but I'm not going to dispute it here in any way. So we've got Jerome Bettis, the Bus, of Pittsburgh Steeler fame, Honey Badger. Yeah, because you've got the dichotomy of honey, sweet, smooth, silky, buttery. Just, I know it's not buttery, but it's, with the contrast of a badger. So he, yeah, I think you get it, especially if you watched him play. The Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, Neon Deion Sanders. Somebody did well there. We also have Rocket Ismail. Then, of course, his brother's much less famous nickname, which was the Missile. But Rocket Ismail, I was about to say the Heisman Trophy winner, did not win the Heisman. Tim Brown won the Heisman. I think most of us thought Rocket was going to win it like in 1990. He did not. Johnny Football, there we go. And those are the ones that are served up. There are not as many nicknames today as there used to be, which is kind of surprising because with all of the me in the media now, with the, look at me, I guess they get so much attention, they don't need to come up with a nickname. All right, so we've got Gregory serving up Deion Sanders' other nickname, Primetime, or his next one, Coach Prime. He's got all sorts of nicknames. I guess he's like Muhammad Ali. Was it Muhammad Ali or it was somebody else who had so many nicknames? Anyway, All right. Red Buckeyes going way back with Lou, the toe Groza of Ohio State and Cleveland Browns fame. Nice one by Jackson Terrence Mount Cody in the interior line of the Alabama Crimson Tide, of course. Shoelace, Mike G. Shoelace. I don't know. There's a story behind that. I don't know if he had like weird, crazy, fancy looking shoelaces, or maybe he lost his shoe or he didn't tie his shoes. There was some kind of story like that. Maybe he didn't tie his shoes. But that was, of course, Denard Robinson, Michigan quarterback, the Nigerian Nightmare, Christian Okoye. Well done by Pit Snipe Husker. I did not know that this particular nickname existed. I'm well aware of the lefty quarterback, who, of course, signed a contract with the Detroit Lions. I'm sorry, the Detroit Tigers. Rick, the Peach Leach. I started covering Alabama football just after David Palmer. Did I see any David Palmer games? I do not believe. I think his last year was 93. Yes, the Deuce, war number 2. Touchdown. Now, this is disputable here. I guess. I shouldn't dispute it. I'm just saying when I see touchdown Timmy, I think actually touchdown Tommy Vardell was the first one I remember having that nickname. Tommy Vardell, Stanford, Cleveland Browns, but there Mike is going with Tim Biakabatuka. How many touchdowns, in fact, did Tim Biakabatuka score? I don't know. I'm going to find out. Not that I could spell his. Oh, man. I've looked him up a lot of times because Google filled it in for me. Tim Biakabatuka, didn't he play for the Panthers in the NFL? So at Michigan, he scored 24 touchdowns. He scored 5, 7, and 12 in his 3 years. 5, 7, and 12, 24 touchdowns. I'm guessing Tommy Vardell scored a ton of touchdowns at Stanford. Tommy Vardell scored 37 touchdowns. His last 2 years, 14 and 20. A lot of touchdowns out of Tommy Vardell, but he is the guy that I think of. Jared Lorenzen, may he rest in peace, the hefty lefty. We got Shoelace again from Gregory. Timothy, help me out on this one. The Runaway Beer Truck? Who's that? The Runaway Beer Truck. It's kind of a long nickname. Yeah, well, this is one of the original nicknames right there. Well done again by PT Sniper Husker with Dick Night Train Lane, who still and probably will forever have the NFL record for single season interceptions. Well, Mike, Mel Tucker would certainly make the worst contracts list if there was one all time. This was current contracts. Yes, Mel Tucker, my goodness. Michigan State way overpaid him. The Boz, Brian Bosworth. Jack Tatum, the assassin. We could be here all day with nicknames. Well done, everyone. I'm impressed by your recollection. We had the Diesel and John Riggins, but I think that came after his college football career. The Playmaker, Michael Irvin. Broadway Joe Namath. Of course, that did not occur in college. That was after the fact when he went to Broadway. Johnny Unitas. I don't know if that's really a nickname. It's just his first name with the last letter, but Johnny U. Johnny Unitas, Fran the Scram Tarkington. I'm going way back. I'm just basically starting with Super Bowl history is what I'm doing. Captain Comeback, Roger Staubach. There's been quite a few cool before the next name, like Cool Lenny Dawson, Cool Joe Montana. The Kansas Comet, Gale Sayers. Fine job by all of you. Again, join us on Instagram. The VOCFB is the handle. The VOCFB. That's on both Twitter, Facebook also, and on Instagram. So we need all the support we can get from all of you. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And keep in mind, everyone, that if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you can listen to the show, and I have no banner for this. I'm searching. That's a old song back in the 50s. I've been searching. You can catch the audio from all of these live streams thanks to our buddy Jackson. You can catch the audio from all the live streams on your favorite audio platform: Spotify, Amazon, Apple, of course, the Voice of College Football. You can find it right there. Donnie Shell, number 31, a former Pittsburgh Steelers safety, nicknamed the Human Torpedo or the Torpedo. Dave's here. I do not believe this is a real nickname, but it might as well have been, because Ronnie Lott, was just incredibly tough. Incredibly tough. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And this is going to be a call-in show every day. This is going to be a place where you can find great guests like we did today with Melissa Treebwasser. And I believe on Tuesday, we're going to have Jason Priester from the Clemson Insider join us. And again, after March Madness clears out, expect tons of great guests, my analysis, of course, your comments, and so forth here at the Voice of College Football. And next time you will see me will be Tuesday. 1 o'clock is the recruiting show with Leanne Herring. 2 p.m. Eastern is the Ole Miss Live show with Leanne and also Ruby Dreher. And then we've got the Iowa show. Oh, my goodness. We got this show at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then we've got the Iowa show with Corey Brad at 5:30 Eastern. So we're slamming in those 4 shows, 1, 2, 4, and 5:30. So it'll be a busy Tuesday here at the Voice of College Football. Please join us then. In the meantime, check out the videos. We'll see you on Tuesday.